from Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey in the morning makes me feel alive. Woke me up this morning, now I'm up and on my way. Oh, 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 yeah, what a great way to start your day, the Lakey way.
Well, praise the Lord. Pass the ammunition. Good to have you here on the show this morning. Lakey is my name. The hat is tilted in honor of Frank Sinatra. I don't know why it's tilted. It just looked at the monitor and my hat was crooked. Delilah, that's your one job, to make sure the hat's not crooked and the makeup is done well. And neither are done well today. So, Delilah, demerits for you. Anyway, good to have you here on the 31st day of July. Year of our Lord 2025. Yeah, it is still 2025. And a pleasure to have you here. You know, I realized something this week, and welcome to the program. It's Jimmy Lakey unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. I realized something this week that I want to tell you about, and it may be a special moment for you. The Monday was, the 28th, I believe it was. And I was looking at my calendar, going through, making sure I had all my schedule, because I'm a very busy person during the day. And I was going through everything, and I realized my calendar was marked that Monday, the 28th, would have been the, ready for this? The 11th year that I would have been with the iHeart Kingdom, back before they poop canned me and kicked me off of the curb last November, after serving faithfully for 10 years through all sorts of crap and discourse and dysfunction. I served faithfully, but anyway, it would have been 11 years. Can you believe that? Monday would have been 11 years. Now, I have been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. I should do the total of how many years was I in corporate / terrestrial talk radio. Took a couple of hiatuses, retired a couple of times, and got called back out of retirement. But anyway, any of you who followed the career on the Northern Colorado station that I was on for many years, 10 years, over 10 years. Monday would have been the 11th year. It's still on my calendar. Anybody else mark your calendar with things like that? Like I have the anniversary of the date that I first traveled to Rwanda, and I have all these things I just keep on my calendar. It's kind of at this point in history. It's kind of a milestone, a marker. In the Bible, they would lay a stone down as a place of remembrance, and I put those little stones on my calendar just sometimes to reflect on what was, what could have been, and what we put up with for all those years. Anyway, I just threw that out there that it's the 31st day of July, year of our Lord 2025. Lakey is my name, and the reason you're watching this is because I have been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. So I'm glad to have been released, by the way. It all works out good in the end, doesn't it? Hey, Kamala Harris, let's talk some news stories. Got some great guests. Richard C. Lyons, great historian, scheduled to be with us today. Our big-time law guy, John O'Connor, is going to be on the program. And, of course, Jay Ratliff, our aviation and travel expert, is supposed to be on the program as well. Got a fun question of the day for any of you who are Amazon and or online shoppers. You buy stuff online, have stuff dropped at your doorstep. Got a question for you coming up here in just a minute. So there's something for everybody on the program. And I do guarantee you this is an all-ages show. There is no nudity. We will not have gratuitous sex scenes on this show. Nothing. It's all going to be family-friendly entertainment for the most part. If producer Chad gets on a mic, there's probably going to be an F-bomb or 5 drop. But other than that, it's going to be a pretty clean show. I'm just letting you know, Arloa in Texas, everybody, wherever you're at, glad to have you out there in the program. All right, everybody get the chat room going. Get that chat room going. By the way, got a chat from an email yesterday from Stacy in Texas, and she wanted to critique and she shamed me a little bit, but I own it. She shamed me a small bit in the fact that producer Chad puts up titles for me every day, and it's sometimes they're sarcastic and sometimes they're true. The most handsome guy in the world. He has never put that up. He probably should, but nevertheless, he puts these titles up. And yesterday it was in small print on my monitor, so I can't see it. I often don't recognize it, but I forwarded it to Chad and said, "Yeah, they need a hobby out there." Because Stacy had noticed, and I didn't even notice as a native son of the great state of Texas, I didn't even notice, but he said, "I want a Whataburger" on my title down there, which there is no title. He'll probably change that soon now and call me a jackass. But we can say jackass. That's a donkey, a Bible donkey. A Bible donkey is what you'd be. Now, Democrats are just jackasses. They're not they're not Bible donkeys because they don't like the Bible. Anyway, she noticed that Whataburger was misspelled. Whataburger has an H in it. What a burger, not Whataburger. So anyway, I didn't notice it, but I sent it to producer Chad. I'm not sure if he saw it. But Stacy, thank you for your spell check. We appreciate it because goodness knows, after a few sips, sometimes we can't spell the cat without a C and a T spot. I still get confused. Anyway, good to have all of you here on the show. Jaime Lagos is my name. Pleasured, pleased, and thrilled to be here on it. All right, let's do Kamala Harris. Should we start with Kamala Harris? Kamala Harris just said no. And I'm not talking to a bottle of vodka because we know that's not true. Kamala Harris has now said that she will not and cannot run for the governorship of California. So that leaves an a more open and unpredictable primary for the Democrats. Who's going to replace Kamala Harris out on the West Coast and left coast and continue to lead that state into hell? Well, it's not going to be Kamala. Kamala says, bye-bye, at least for now. She says, for now, I'm not going to seek it. If the truth be known, Kamala had a problem. No one liked her. That's the honest to God problem. She had a polling problem, and the big dollars that you would think that a former VP and a woman of her stature might get, those big dollars disappeared. Nobody's donating to Kamala. And so Kamala said, well, if you're not going to give me money, I'm just going to keep drinking. And so Kamala commits to the liquor store, but she doesn't commit to the governor's office. And so Kamala, we're going to miss you. But, the people of California, they probably would have elected her. They very likely would have elected her on what qualifications, what accomplishments what has she ever done? What has qualified her? I mean, is there anything that she could say as a vice president, as a senator, here are my accomplishments. And if you elect me as governor, I will do this. The sad thing is she couldn't say any of that. And nobody was giving her money. So Kamala's not running for governor in California. So California, you are at least freed from now from the cackling hyena, Kamala Harris. She's not going to be your next governor. You think about the qualifications that we kind of joke about California, saying, why would they elect her? I mean, what are her accomplishments? She has had the largest stage in the world of any potential candidate, and she was still considered a viable candidate for governor, and yet her resume and her accomplishments reflected nothing. She had a lot of fancy titles, really good to prepare your business card and have vice president of the United States. That's a real big deal, right? That's a great title to have, but she has no accomplishments, and yet the people of California would have duly elected her, probably. Now, here's another question I ask you. As we poke fun at California for allowing her to actually be considered a viable and prominent candidate, hate to break the news to you, but we elect politicians like that all across America. They have flash, they have style, they have speaking ability, but they have no accomplishments. Most of them couldn't run a Dairy Queen if they wanted to, but yet they're going to become experts on business and legislation. Here in the state of Colorado, we can make fun of California all we want. We have Jared Jazz Hands Polis out there, and he's run our state for 2 terms. He was a congressman. He did start a greeting card company, and 1-800-Flowers or something. He started that. So I guess he had some private sector experience, but politically he had done he had done nothing. He's a do-nothing congressman, whined a lot, cried a lot, jazzed hands a lot, whatever he did. He was just worthless. And yet he's also been worthless as our governor, unless you're looking to destroy his state. So anyway, think of all the politicians that you elect and ask yourself, what have they done for me and what qualifies them to be the president and or the governor? Kamala says bye-bye. And California, I hate to say it, you've dodged a bullet the same way America dodged a bullet. We all dodge a bullet when Kamala stays, I don't wish people to be buried in the bottle. You got to be careful out there. I believe in things with moderation, Kamala. But, the drunker Kamala stays, the more she stays out of the public eye, and that's probably good for all of us. So bye-bye, Kamala. Don't let the door hit you. Can I make a prediction? Unless dire circumstances erupt, Kamala's not going to run for office again. She's unpopular. She was a very unpopular Democrat. And a lot of people have this selective memory that when they coronated Queen Kamala and said what a qualified individual she was, before Joe Biden had his crappy pants meltdown on the stage of the debate, and they were telling us Joe's his best ever. He's as sharp as a tack out there. Remember that? There was talk in the media, go look it up. There was a lot of talk that they have to replace Kamala, that Kamala was the boat anchor on his reelection. And even the Democrats are circulating and percolating in the media, and they're usually the same thing. They were talking about replacing Kamala, but yet they got their talking points. Hey, stop talking bad about Kamala. We have to instill her and call her the queen, the most qualified person to ever seek the office. I think it was Barry Hussein, Kenyan-born Obama, that actually said those things. They all said she was most qualified. Well, she wasn't qualified. Not qualified to be the dog catcher of California. Not qualified to be. I wouldn't hire Kamala Harris to come and water the cactus at my house when I travel to Rwanda. And I don't even have cactus at my house. So I still wouldn't invite her over. You know why I wouldn't invite her over? Because she would get in the liquor cabinet and producer Chad and I wouldn't have anything to have libations with. So throwing that out there. Kamala Harris says goodbye. California says thank you, Jesus, except half California doesn't remember who Jesus is. So anyway, California, you've dodged a bullet, and Kamala is not going to be your next governor. Got another story here. If you ever think there's no waste, fraud, and abuse in America, there's waste, fraud, and abuse. I put a story up. I got it from Fox News. I find it interesting. I've headlined it, Medicaid millionaire. Louisiana Medicaid millionaire has been found out has been bought a Lamborghini while claiming. If you think your tax dollars are really, we don't need to cut the entitlements. We don't need to cut some of this spending. It's gonna really affect people. There's nothing to see here, Elon. There's nothing to see here, brother Big Balls, as you're doging the government and looking at how we spend money. There's nothing to see here. Well, there is something to see here. There's waste, fraud, and abuse run amok in our government. A Louisiana woman who purchased a Lamborghini while fraudulently obtaining Medicaid benefits is now facing a fraud charge. Her name was Candace Taylor of Slidell, Louisiana. Slidell, Louisiana. Anybody ever been to Slidell, Louisiana? I think I have been. I don't remember why. I probably had to purge it from my mind at therapy, but I think I've heard of Slidell. Being a Texas guy, I've heard of Slidell. Maybe I knew somebody from Slidell. Slidell, Louisiana. You got to say it like that, too. You just can't say Slidell. You got to say Slidell, Louisiana. Everybody practice with me together. Slidell, Louisiana. See, you guys are getting good at that Southern drawl. You gotta kick it in. Candace Taylor, age 35, of Slidell, Louisiana, has been dubbed as the Medicaid millionaire by the Office of the Louisiana Attorney General, Liz Murrell. Candace from Slidell, Louisiana, was arrested on Monday. The State Bureau of Investigation began looking into Candace Taylor from Slidell, Louisiana. After, gotta stop that, don't I? That's probably too many. Delilah says enough. As if we ever trust Delilah when it comes to topics of moderation. She was arrested after receiving a complaint from the Louisiana Health and Department saying that she underreported her income to qualify for Medicaid benefits. And from 2021 to 2024, Ms. Taylor from Slidell, Louisiana, continued to transfer tens of thousands of dollars between her personal and her business accounts, personal inflows consistently exceeding the eligibility of thresholds for Medicaid. She took the Medicaid health insurance for low-income adults and children, and she was saving enough money. As she said, she only had about $1,900 of weekly income and no dependents. And so she tweaked the numbers she got out there, but she generated in a business while she was getting Medicaid $9.5 million between 2020 and 2024, according to court documents, enough the money that she bought herself a Lamborghini while she was on the government dole. So let this be just another example. There's oftentimes fraud, waste, and abuse out there, and they want to squawk about Tesla and Elon Musk and bomb his cars because he's doging the government back in a couple of months ago, and complain about big balls and pretend that there's nothing to see here. And Candace Taylor from Slidell, Louisiana, has proven that there is something to see there. So I got other stories I want to get to as well. question of the day before I go to my first guest is going to be this. Anybody ever ordered something online? Up until a couple of years ago, I was opposed to Amazon. I didn't buy stuff online. I wanted to go touch. It was like the old days. I wanted to touch and feel the Charmin. I wanted to squeeze it myself. But after I learned about Amazon and some of the things I didn't have to go store hopping to find, I became a prolific Amazon shopper, not as much as some of you. When my son was graduating high school and I wanted to buy some of these cool things, party decorations, and I couldn't find them in the local party store. And I'd seen them online, and I looked, and I said, oh, you can buy those on Amazon. I bought them, so I started realizing you can buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. But anybody ever buy something you didn't like or you're surprised? Everybody watched the infomercial late night, and you're for sure that you're going to get this product, this exercise machine that's really going to help you lose the weight. I bought one when I was in college. I split it with my college roommate, and it was something that you do sit-ups with, and you held it, and it was it's supposed to give you rock hard abs. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've seen my abs today, they're still rock hard. Unfortunately, there's not a six-pack, it's a keg. That's the problem. But they're still rock hard, very, very firm. We bought this thing. We shared it because we were broke. College kids both put in like $15. It's $29.99. Ordered it. Excuse me for the cough, and it's television. There's no cough button, and I'll go to my guest, and then I can go off screen and hack up a lung here. But we do sit-ups and produce rock hard abs. It was not worth anything. I think we spent $15 a piece to get it to us, and we shared it. We were so poor we had to share our Amazon purchases. We ought to do a story like that one day. How poor were you? I was telling my son this weekend when he was home for a couple of days from college before heading back to fall football practice that started yesterday. I was telling him, I remember being in college so broke and so poor that I would save my money all week. And I told this story so that once a week I could go to the Taco Bell and get myself a single bean burrito for 59 cents and a Dr. Pepper. And I would go by myself because I didn't want anyone messing with my burrito because it was a big deal. So I was so poor, we had to split our then Amazon or Home Shopping Network purchase because there was no Amazon back then. Anyway, give us the product that you bought and you couldn't believe you bought it, almost embarrassed you bought it. Maybe it was a drunken stupor. Maybe it was just a late night weight loss Ponzi scheme, whatever it was. Everybody, it's time for confession. Would you please go on under the chat room and let us know. Let us know exactly what it is that you might have purchased online that you had a regret from later. Okay. All right, Stacy, you see the question across the bottom of the screen. All right. Did producer Chad? Did he spell everything correctly? We've got the spell checkers in Texas. I think our Loa corrected our spelling once as well. Anyway, it's all good. Let us know those items that you bought. Feel free. We'd love to hear from you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring into the program Mr. Richard C. Lyons, historian extraordinaire. Always love to hear from him. Puts our Republican perspective. Goes back to the shadows of the Acropolis and looks like the great republics or empires of the past, and says, warning America, we want to be careful to learn from what has happened previously so we don't repeat it in the future. Historian Richard C. Lyons in the studio. Richard, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Jimmy. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Are you an online shopper at all? Or are you like I used to be and you tried to avoid the online shopping?
No, I am that, but I have a better parallel with you. During college, it wasn't Taco Bell, it was Jack in the Box. And the only part of Jack in the Box that was open was a drive-through window, but I was on foot. And I had my bag of coins. Yeah. And I had exactly $3.85 to buy a full meal on a Sunday night. And as they were counting it, a cloudburst happened and I got soaked. I had to walk home.
I remember those days. I was telling my son because my son doesn't know it, but his football coaches, when I coached him, one of my fellow coaches, when they called him Ricky Schroeder. And he's like, who's Ricky Schroeder? He was born with a silver spoon. My son to this day doesn't get the Ricky Schroeder analogy, but it was probably true. So I was talking to him, taking him back to the airport, as he was talking about how much he needed Daddy to put in his bank account again. And I started referring to him my Taco Bell story that I had. I saved money every week to get that Taco Bell burrito because that's all I could afford. If there were cushions in our college dorm, we were in the cushions trying to get it. So anytime you have to share an Amazon purchase with a buddy, you're broke. And it was a sit-up machine too, so we're both trying to do sit-ups in the dorm to impress the ladies and get our beach bods, and we had to share the damn thing. It was funny. Oh my! All right, Richard C. Lyons, our guest on the program. Glad to have him, and it's a point of history, a history about your own life. All right, I want to dive into something and get your comment on this because Dan Bongino made a comment. We've been talking for a couple of weeks now about these revelations coming from Tulsi Gabbard, the corruption of the Biden administration, the Obama administration, the spying on Donald Trump, the coup attempt, the intelligence communities and their deep state swampiness that they have. Bongino came out and said that he says he's seen some things that have shaken him to his bones, and we cannot run a republic like this. And the quote is fascinating. I haven't heard him explain what he's seen and what we're supposed to be afraid of, but the warning itself is quite scary. He's been shaken to his bones. We can't run a republic like this. And my question becomes, Richard, what did he see? Why do we not know what he saw? And what are our lessons we should learn?
Well, I would expand that a little bit just to speak generally about what I think he's seeing and what the problem is. And that is when you have the awesome power of the investigative ability of the FBI, the CIA, and then you align that with the Department of Justice, right? And all the infrastructure post 9/11 for surveillance and all these sorts of activities that are in one city of the country where power and wealth are concentrated. And then they feel, and these agencies feel a loyalty first to a political party, not first to a constitution. That's the basic general problem. You had people like Comey Brennan and Clapper and Jake Sullivan operating, right, as if they were soldiers in an army for the Democrat Party. The only armies we're supposed to have, the only investigative agencies or justice agencies that we have are supposed to first be dedicated to the Constitution. A lot of the Constitution, I'm sure you've read it, Jimmy, is devoted to elections, right? It's how the people decide who the government is, right? That's how we govern the governors.
Yeah.
All right. So if you attempt a coup, you are flying in the face of half the Constitution, let alone the Bill of Rights, by which everyone is protected. And we know what happened to Carter Page and the spying that they did through the FISA courts. So this is really basic to our society, if our society is to exist. And I think that's exactly what Dan Bongino commented on. If we are to go forward as a constitutional republic, the Constitution is the first matter of law. And if you serve in agencies devoted to justice, like the FBI, yes, or like the DOJ, that's your first devotion, the law, the facts and the law. So what happened here? What happened in this episode was that the facts were delivered to the president on December 8th, 2016. The facts were that the Russians did not meddle in the election that November. What they did was James Comey said, I don't agree with this assessment, so I'm shelving it. And rather than the assessment of December 8th being published the next day, Obama convened all of his heads of the intelligence agencies, and I say his heads, not America's heads of the intelligence agencies. These are Obama people, devoted to him, devoted to the Democrat Party, not to us, not the Constitution. And in that meeting on December 9, he said, I want a new ICA. And he channeled it to certain agencies, and within those agencies, certain persons. so that they would arrive 1 month later, which is incredibly fast. But he wanted it before Trump took office. So on January 6th, 2 weeks before he took office, he got an ICA report that was 180 degrees opposite to the one delivered on December 8th. And it implicated Trump on two things. First, that the Russians meddled in the election, which the former said no. And second, the second part of the accusation, and this, Jim, I don't know if your audience knows, they based this on a clandestine single source. What does that mean? Nobody knows who the source was, and there was only one of them. And that part of the accusation was that Vladimir Putin meddled in the election to get Trump elected. In other words, the whole thing was a complete fabrication. And the Steele dossier that was no part of the original ICA became the center part of the subsequent one that was falsified. And so when you're doing this, what you're doing is you're in a room, literally I have the list here, it's half of Obama's cabinet, 26 or 30 people. Wow. 30 people are deciding that the persons who elected Donald Trump are wrong. 26 people decided through one person that what they wanted was right, and they wanted Trump out.
Yeah.
And that is as unconstitutional as it gets. That is third world socialist, excuse the term, bullshit.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Richard, the problem is we hear this. Now, I've heard people already speculate because of the immunity case that Donald Trump had before the Supreme Court, that Obama's probably going to be able to hide for cover and say, I was just head of the table. Maybe
right.
That's true. But you're mentioning all these other people. I agree. And I want to unpack that. It's not true. But even if you go there, you still got not just Clapper, Comey, and Brennan. You've got other people that were sitting at the table knowing that this was being fabricated. They did absolutely nothing. And the question is, who's going to get the orange jumpsuit and be perp walk down the sidewalk?
Well, and that's...
Oh, Richard, you froze right at the key moment there. Live television. Okay, Richard, you froze. Start again.
No. I was very happy to hear in an interview with John Ratcliffe that this conspiracy, as far as the DOJ is concerned, is ongoing. There is no term of limitations as to this. And it's not just, and you said them well, Comey,
Brennan, Clapper.
Comey, Brennan, Clapper, also Jake Sullivan. He was the instigator of design of Hillary Clinton's campaign to get the Steele dossier and use it in her campaign to sink Trump's campaign. Also, the person's going before the FISA court to get the warrants to spy. They lied to a judge to get warrants to spy on Trump's campaign. Then you have the persons orchestrated in this. Why can't we put John Kerry on this list? He was on the meeting. He was in the meeting. Why can't we put Hillary Clinton in this? I don't think you'll ever get Obama. But what will be worst for Obama to suffer is to be pilloried, which means history is written based on facts. And the facts are, not only did he attack through the IRS, the Tea Party movement, not only did he attack religion through the HHS and Little Sisters of the Poor, not only did he surveil reporters like Cheryl Atkinson, who wrote stories he didn't particularly like. She was surveilled by the FBI. Then you get into this whole business. His suffering would be that history's written correctly about him, and that he is.
Oh, we got that connection.
God, they start to act like it.
It's going to be interesting. They say that this is not a congressional hearing that's happening, and because those are usually dog and pony shows that give some sound bites and fundraising material. Trey Gowdy held the best of those in the world, but nothing ever happened there. This is actually the Department of Justice investigation, and it seems like the evidence is laying out before them, and because they've labeled this as an investigation into a grand conspiracy, the statute of limitations would not be going away. So it's all included in this thing. It seems to me, Richard C. Lyons, that maybe, just maybe, we could start learning some. I mean, I don't know what. There's some questions to ask them, I's to dot and T's to cross. It seems like they ought to be able to move pretty quick on some of these people.
Well, the funny thing is, it never moves quick, does it, Jimmy?
No.
And these facts are hidden in, crater after crater of classification and all this sort of thing, shield after shield of this stuff. But I think it has to be done for the sake of posterity, because this is so opposite to the glory of our founding, the law of our land. They literally, a room full of one man and 26 of his associates undermined half of the Constitution in order to arrive at a different result than what the American people demanded in that election. And it goes on beyond that, Jimmy. In 2018, based on all this BS, the Republicans lost the House.
Yeah.
And it was based on this media firestorm, based on this hearing after hearing that the Democrats ran, and then the impeachments and all that. All of these things. This is one of the worst episodes in American history. And it was done by one man, 26 others, a complicit media, and a complicit Democrat Party, that no one in the entire Democrat Party said, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't ring right. It just doesn't ring right.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you, the layers of lies we've been told, and somebody's got to be held accountable.
There's about 1,000 now.
The layer, this whole coup thing that you just laid out so perfectly in the meeting, and all the grand conspirators that are in there. And then you even go back to the last administration. Joe Biden was obviously mentally deficient. He obviously had cognitive decline. Joe Biden had some issues, and he couldn't even sign pardons. He was signing things with auto pens. Even that was a lie. The media was complicit in that lie. This is as sharp as I've ever seen Joe. His press secretary came out and said that he could run circles around the interns. He had more energy than anybody. At which point do you have so many layers of lies and mistrusting government, and you have a media that's not willing to expose them and do their First Amendment right and duty? At which point does this thing just collapse? I mean, you cannot survive with this type of corruption, unexposed, unaccountable. Republics have fallen for lesser than this.
Yeah, and I wrote a chapter in Shadows of the Acropolis, Jimmy, devoted to the fact that in a constitutional republic, and particularly with the media, you have to base everything you do on the truth, on facts, the evidence in front of you, not on hearsay, not on opinion, not on propaganda. And then every official of the federal government, it's statutory in our Constitution, black letter. You have to take an oath first to the Constitution, right? First duty to defend the Constitution, which means you abide by it. You don't rip it up at your convenience and go after your political opponents. That's what every tyrant has done throughout all of human history. They rip up the law, whatever law they have, and they go after their opponents. And that's exactly what happened here. It's no different than things that happened in Rome or in Greece or in all the tin pot tyrannies in South America. That's what this is. And that's, I think, what Dan Bongino, to bring it around, that's what he's seeing. My God, we're like Venezuela.
Yeah. There's a piece at justthenews.com by John Solomon. I'll just read the headline. It kind of falls right in line. Newly declassified evidence suggests that the FBI conspired with Clinton to legitimize the Russiagate. So you got Hilary Rodham Kankles Clinton in this thing as well. I mean, it just, the list goes on and on and on. And I don't know if it's a low-level or high-level agent of the FBI. Comey was running the FBI. You just, the more they, what did Kash Patel said yesterday, they found documents that were in burn bags that were further evidence that evidently they never made it to the incinerator, but they were planning to destroy the evidence.
And this at a time, if we remember to that summer, it was all about Hillary's emails and her server in her basement that was, open to anyone, literally. Because she feels, again, she's exactly like Obama. They feel they are above the law. They can do anything. They can even get rid of their opponent during an election. They can get rid of them after the election if they don't like what happened. Right?
Yeah.
And half this country, more than half this country, would love to see Hillary in a jumpsuit.
Yeah.
And you know who might be happiest, Jimmy?
Bill.
Tickle your funny. Bill Clinton would be happiest because he wouldn't have to listen to her other than on visiting day.
I think he's going to skip visiting day. He'll be at the brothel on visiting day. He's not going to be down there.
Finally, I'm free.
Yeah, Bill's going to be thinking Hillary's in jail and Epstein's Island is closed. Dang it! What am I going to do with myself now? He's going to try to find another one. It's important we deal with this. This is very important stuff. And I had a friend yesterday, a reasonable friend, said, Jimmy, don't you think this could be a distraction, though? They're going to just parlay this. This is the Department of Justice. This is Trump retribution. Why get distracted? Just celebrate the tariffs, celebrate the economy, do all this stuff, and don't get distracted by what happened in the past. You're a historian. That's my undergrad work was in history. And you better get bogged down by what happened in the past and deal with it, because if you don't deal with that dysfunction, whether it's a family dysfunction or you better deal with it, or it's going to come haunt you in the future.
I'll take you to another thing we're suffering, Jimmy, because people don't rely on the facts regarding history. You know, we're about the leader in the polls in the New York mayoral race is a socialist. He's a proud socialist. And if anybody understood socialism's history and the tens, even hundreds of millions of people who have died and the billions of people enslaved by socialism, his candidacy would not even be happening. In 1927 or in the 1928 election, the socialist candidate in the national election got 1% of the vote. Now we're seeing a majority of one of our major political parties is socialist. Now, the best thing that could happen, and this is what Trump has done, he fractured that party because they were not successful at fracturing him. So he fractured that Democrat Party, and now it's in pieces. Half of it, at least, is socialist.
Yeah.
But socialism is opposite to our Constitution. Everything about it is opposite to our Constitution. The other half is moderate, and they cannot get elected without their nut wing left, right? So I think Trump has done us a great service, and we should use this time to define this chapter in our history to let people know exactly why we should not suffer such a concentration of power in Washington, D.C., why we shouldn't suffer persons working for government who work for one person, Obama, not for 330 million people. You work for 330 million people and you work for the law. You don't work for one man. You don't work for a political party. That's not what you do when you work in the federal government for us.
Yeah. The voice, by the way, if you're listening later in the day, I know lots of you watch it live, but the thousands of ear holes by the end of the day will hear this interview on the podcast platforms, on iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. So if you're listening later in the day and you're one of those thousands of ear holes that will hear, that's the voice of Richard C. Lyons, author of The DNA of Democracy and The Shadows of the Acropolis. We'll talk about the books here in just a moment in the series. Let me dive into another story, kind of segue to a later segment in my show, but the Justice Department has also said, hey, we don't just have to get the executive branch was corrupt, but they have now filed a complaint against that Judge Boasberg for his misconduct and his continuing blocking of the executive branch. So we have parts of the executive branch that have been acting extra constitutional, if you will. And I believe we have the judicial branch acting extra constitutional. We have a very dysfunctional legislative branch. I mean, they're having to pass laws now to hopefully stop insider trading because they're all getting rich off of things that they're learning. The whole thing's dysfunctional, but the judicial branch, I mean, we can vote some smarmy politicians out. The judges are there for a long time, and we're getting a lot of problems from this from the judicial branch. Give me your thoughts in history.
Well, I think, you know, these three branches are always going to be butting heads, and one trying to take the powers or alternatives of another. And so what Boasberg is trying to do, and it's a general Democrat Democrat Party maneuver is to use the judiciary branch to block a Republican president or a Republican Congress by blocking their laws. So what has one district judge done? There are 94 different district courts in America and 600 some judges. This is one judge unelected by the people of the United States, right? The president is elected by all the people, or your representatives are elected by portions of their states, or Senate, it's the whole state. This one guy is trying to change just as they tried in Trump's first term to block him through all these investigations from doing his agenda. This one judge is stopping it in one district court and making it a nationwide blockage of the Trump agenda, an agenda that was overwhelmingly voted for by the American people. And Trump was given a majority in Congress and a majority in the Senate to put his agenda forward. This one judge is corrupting our Constitution by saying, no, I don't agree. I don't agree with, how many votes did he get? 80 million? I don't agree with 80 million Americans. So I'm just going to do what I do because I don't like what he's doing.
Yeah, Judge Boasberg, I think is his name. Boasberg, yeah, he's a piece of work for sure. All right, Richard C. Lyons, you are a historian. You've written the books, the series, The Shadows of the Acropolis. Easy for me to say without much coffee. DNA of Democracy as well. Are you optimistic, sir? Is this a time that we're going to start getting things right? Obviously, we have to learn some lessons. You talk about those lessons in your book series. How's your optimism level?
My optimism level is very high because we are talking about the subjects we're talking on now, Jimmy. If Hilary had won in 2016, we wouldn't be talking about any truth or facts anymore. We would be living with a more and more powerful central government determining more and more about what our life is. We wouldn't be making the decisions, the government would, right? And even the fact that Trump had one administration, then was out of power for 4 years, and now has come back, he used those 4 years very wisely to determine exactly what he was going to do and exactly how to do it and exactly who to do it with. And he has one of the best cabinets in American history to do it with. And a people that are waking up to the fact that the media, the mainstream media and the Democrat Party, every time they open their mouth or use a pen or use a tablet or a computer, they are lying to your face, literally lying to your face.
Yeah. Let's talk about the DNA of Democracy, Shadows of the Acropolis. You've written those, the DNA of Democracy series. Important reads. Where do people start in the series?
Well, the series is based on, during the Obama administration, I saw what he was doing with the IRS, the HHS, the FBI, all these things. I had to demonstrate what has gone wrong with our government, right? I had to start with how our government was made. That's the DNA of democracy. How and why our government was made the way it was, and what the Civil War had to do with it, what the suffragette movement had to do with it. And that's where the DNA of democracy stops. Why? Because with Woodrow Wilson, and for the last 100 years, I wrote The Shadows of the Acropolis. It's how government power and wealth has centered in one city, which was not the intent of our Constitution, and in one place, the administrative state in Washington, which is an unenumerated power, never even suggested in the Constitution. But that's where most of our laws are made. They're called rules, and where all of the power is in these unaccountable, unelected agencies. And so if you want to know where we are today as a constitutional republic, you can view how we were born, you can view the growth of where we are today. And I thought it was very important to get that out.
Richard C. Lyons, LYONS.com is your website. The book, the series, all available anywhere great books are sold. What will folks find on your website, Mr. Lyons?
Descriptions of the books, what the critics have said, and I have a little shop there to buy if they care to purchase.
If you're a student of history, want to understand the real birth of our nation and what our founders envisioned and how it has been bastardized into the current era, and kind of get a perspective of where we were, where we have been, where we are, and where we should be going, richardclyons.com, richardclyons.com. Sir, when was do you still go back? You talk about these those college purchases when you're broke at Jack in the Box. Do you ever go back there and go just to reminisce? About once or twice a year, I will pull up to a Taco Bell and get the bean burrito just to reflect on the milestones of how far I've come from 59-cent digging in the couch cushion at 19.
I do exactly that, Jimmy, a couple times a year.
That's what I
do.
do.
I enjoy the heck out of it.
I tell you give me all the fancy stuff on a Taco Bell menu. That bean burrito takes me back to the days of poverty as a college kid. So that was a special treat in life.
And some special days.
It was it. Richard C. Lyons, pleasure to have you, sir. richardclyons.com. Shadows of the Acropolis, a DNA of Democracy series, all available on his website, or just look up his name on the Barnes & Noble or the Amazon app, but his website has it directly. And Lyons is spelled with a Y if you're not watching the screen, because, again, thousands of ear holes will hear this show throughout the course of the day as it goes out on the podcast platforms as soon as we're done. And you wonder how to spell Lyons, Lyons. Ladies and gentlemen, talking about judges, talking about legal matters, there's no better brain in America to bring into the conversation except John O'Connor. So many descriptions that I was going to give to him, but I'm going to let him describe himself. John O'Connor, welcome in, sir.
Jimmy, good morning.
Good morning, sir. We'll talk about your books, your website, your podcast, etc. But for those of you don't know, John, he's been back in the Watergate days. He was Deep Throat's attorney, served as in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he knows the legal system very well. John, welcome to the show. Good to have you there from the West Coast. By the way, I guess you're going to be spared the reign of Kamala Harris. She's not going to run for governor out in your home state there.
Terribly disappointed. I was hoping to be led by Kamala into a beautiful future, unburdened by what has been.
Well, I'll call her up and tell her if she can put down the vodka that maybe, John O'Connor was waiting on her. You're waiting for her to lead you to some promised land.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just talking to my previous guest. I know you caught part of it in the green room there. The Justice Department has filed a complaint against this Judge Boasberg for misconduct and interfering with the executive branch of government. You understand both branches of government, the executive branch, the judicial branch, the Department of Justice. What does this complaint entail? What could happen with the complaint, and is it even relevant?
I'm more in the camp of it not being relevant, but it's just really meant to send a message. It's really just a statement that Trump's administration's belief that the judges have gone overboard, that they have gone outside their alley. And I'll say this. The Constitution was created with a lot of gray in between each of the branches. And that gray was sort of meant by the founding fathers to be subject to sort of a push and pull of the democratic process. And so there's always been an issue as to how much the judiciary can do. I remember it took John Marshall until 1830 or 1820, I guess 1820, Marbury versus Madison, in which he announced judicial supremacy, that the judges can determine whether a law is unconstitutional or not. That had to be decided. I mean, was it clear? So he's there staking out a claim on behalf of the judiciary. And of course, we've had these battles between the legislature and the executive branch over, whether we can go to Vietnam without a declaration of war and so forth. And so there's a tug and pull. And I do think that the judges have gotten out over their skis, not just Judge Boasberg. I mean, he's an intelligent guy, by all accounts, a decent guy personally. He was out here for a while in San Francisco. And I think he's sort of a standard issue, more left-leaning judge. And he's very much a fan of keeping the executive branch in tow, and the executive branch doesn't like it. And I think there's something to be said for it. I think judges today are not always giving enough deference to the executive for those things which are executive decisions, and they ought to lay off of that. But that's a question of taste. I mean, I got to say, this is simply a battle that's going to keep going on, and ultimately the Supreme Court has to weigh in.
So this referral from the Department of Justice, is that the process? It goes to the Supreme Court, and you wait for them to sound off. I mean, the Department of Justice per se does not have any authority over a particular judge.
That's right. That's right. That's why I say I don't expect this to go anyplace. Really, I mean, I think it's perhaps a good political move. I'm not going to judge that. But it is a political move, and it's meant to shine a light on a problem. The judges are big on policing themselves, and I think this Supreme Court, by the way, will do a good job of setting down the rules, like they've tried to rein in nationwide injunctions. I think Richard Lyons was talking about it before, about the whole idea of a nationwide injunction by one district court judge. So they're slowly but surely trying to put that house in order. And that's the way we've got to do it. And I think the only real discipline is going to come from within the judiciary. Our judiciary is meant to be independent. We give these guys lifetime salaries. They cannot be removed in office except for misconduct. This is not really misconduct, what he's doing. This is just simply a disagreement over his judicial philosophy. So to a certain degree, even though I disagree with Judge Boasberg's decisions, I actually agree with his right to make them. How's that?
Yeah. The voice of John O'Connor, by the way, if you're listening later in the day to the podcast version of the show, you don't see his name on the screen. John O'Connor, the author of the book called Postgate: How the Washington Post betrayed Deep Throat, covered up Watergate, and began today's partisan advocacy journalism. If you want to know where we're at in politics and journalism and the coverage of the media today, it started back in the Watergate days, and John O'Connor details it in his book called Postgate, and we'll talk about that here more in a moment. John, the story that keeps coming up is this Epstein file, or what are the Epstein files? Is it a Rolodex? Is it a list of people who went to the island? I mean, now it's become just a tangled web that no one seems to be able to unravel. The Trump administration asked for the grand jury testimonies to be released to the public. The judge said, no, we're not going to do that. Now we have a story, of a White House official back in the Obama days filing for a Freedom of Information Act to hand over these files. Give me your thoughts.
I do think that it's a very tough lift to get testimony from the grand jury. That probably is not going to happen because of grand jury confidentiality, and that's written into law. That's actually law. That's Rule 6E. That's passed by Congress. But I think the Trump administration made a bit of a blunder via Pam Bondi when she suggested there was a list. There isn't a list. There's not a list. Epstein did not say, here are all the guys that, I've corrupted into illicit sex. And so we don't have that. And then you have the issue that Kash Patel brings up. There are a couple pieces of litigation, and I'm not sure what they are, over these files and I don't know if he's talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell case is still going on, at least it's on appeal. So there have been some sealing orders by courts that prevent the government from releasing certain documents, which would be prejudicial to the litigants in the case. So there's probably a few juicy things there. I'm just not hopeful. I just think most of this stuff is going to be determined by eyewitnesses. I mean, I don't think Epstein kept files that says, gee, I had John O'Connor on the island, and here's what he did with this girl that's 16 years old. I don't think we're going to find that kind of stuff. So now, what I don't know is, here's what I don't know. I don't know whether we have movies, videos that may have been taken by Epstein's surveillance system. Nobody's said that. That's about the only thing to me, Jimmy, that really is going to excite our interest in.
Yeah.
I think people think there are elites there that have been corrupted, and I think that's probably true. But proving that is quite another thing. And you think about it, if Prince Andrew weren't so stupid as to pose with Virginia Joffrey, maybe he never would have been nailed himself. It's very, very difficult to prove this stuff.
Pam Bondi said that the video they had from his when they raided his home in New York, that was all just child pornography. It was not surveillance cameras, but people say that there was cameras in every room. So you have to say, well, what were the cameras doing in every room, and where are those tapes if that was all child pornography? We get the feeling, and I think there's a lot of folks that feel this way, that the reason we're not going to learn as much isn't because the government doesn't want us to. Is because the government doesn't know some detail. It's because maybe there was some entanglement with, let's say, intelligence and operations in the CIA, and who was the honeypot, and there was a purpose for Epstein that he served for the government. Give me your thoughts on that.
We know that Epstein is an extortion artist. I think that's the way he got the money from the Victoria's Secrets guy. And so he probably, there may have been some film that he used for extortion purposes. The CIA has always been interested in compromising witnesses, I say witnesses or parties, with a prurient matter. If you can get the goods on somebody, you own them. And that's what Watergate was about. Watergate was about that. That's what the CIA was doing, and listening to DNC men out of town calling up their dates for that evening that had been arranged, and what they were saying. And that was going to give them license for their entire operation, which was illegal, to do that throughout the country. They've always been interested in that. So, and they always lie about it. And they lie to this day about what they were doing in Watergate. So the fact that the CIA says, no, we have nothing to do with this, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe they don't have anything to do with it, but you can't gain anything from a denial by the CIA. So that's clearly a possibility that they used him at some point. Now, how much they used him, sometimes people overblow what the CIA is doing. Sometimes they check in with the guy and or have one particular thing they're getting from him. But he did deal with big guys. Yeah. He did deal with big guys, so it would be of interest to certain intelligence operations.
John O'Connor, author of the book called Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat. And if you want to understand today's partisan media, it starts back in this era. And John was also Deep Throat's attorney back in the day. John, in our final question of the day, and I want you to push the book, the website, the podcast, etc. We're seeing some things be talked about. Tulsi Gabbard's released some documents. There's all sorts of information coming out about the Russian collusion story. You look back at the time of Watergate that you served, and you were involved very heavily in that era of our American history. It seems like what we know about Watergate is pretty G-rated compared to what we have going on and being unleashed by Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard. Give me your perspective. Watergate pale in comparison to what we're seeing now?
I've got a couple articles up on American greatness, one probably coming out today, one came out a couple of days ago, in which I described the whole conspiracy. And this Watergate is nothing compared to this. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to think of Watergate as a scandal because it was so penny ante. The Nixon White House didn't know who had done this burglary. Yeah, it was an odd burglary. Like I say, it was really pushed by internal CIA people who had decided to do this, and they got some younger guys to go along with them. But it's nothing. And there wasn't much of a dirty trick. This is supposedly the dirty trick that Nixon was spying on their opponents, and it turns out it was the CIA. There really wasn't much to it, frankly. It was big at the time. Now you look at Russiagate. This is the CIA, the FBI, and also they bring in the DNI and the NSA to create false reports. They have false FISA warrants to spy on people. The whole thing, and they know, we have proof that they knew that this was a made-up Hillary Clinton story meant to detract attention from the fact that she had cheated Bernie Sanders. We know, and yet the entire government apparatus went along with this. going so far as to then create the Mueller investigation. So this is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, a huge perversion of our government in which everyone is telling lies to get the hated candidate. I mean, it just is sickening. And yet the media now, unlike Watergate, is asleep.
Yeah.
And you think that nothing had happened. So it's huge, Jimmy.
John O'Connor, if folks want to get a copy of Postgate, I know you have a website, also has a podcast up there talking about the secrets of the Watergate era, the untold story. Postgatebook.com, is that still the website?
Postgatebook.com, Jimmy.
John, I always appreciate your insights, sir, and I'll let Kamala know you're disappointed she's not going to be able to be your governor.
I feel leaderless, Jimmy.
Rudderless, without a ship. John O'Connor floating around California now with no great leader. John O'Connor, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Postgatebook.com if you want to understand today's partisan journalism and also find out how Watergate pales in comparison to the scandals we're seeing now. Postgatebook.com. Ladies and gentlemen, can I walk into the program? Our good friend, I'm running a couple of minutes late. He's patiently waiting in the green room. It's Mr. Jay Ratliff, our aviation and travel expert. Good morning, Jay. How are you, sir?
Doing well. In fact, I just finished a great book on Abraham Lincoln. It's like 700 pages, but it's amazing when you talk about history. You look back at Lincoln's time when he was written about in the press. The press encouraged his assassination. They talked about what a bad president he was. They said if he loses the election, he won't give up the office. They called him King Lincoln. Gee whiz. I mean, what does this sound like? Sounds like the headlines from today.
Yeah, there's I joked and I saw a meme that joked earlier in the year that said the Democrats haven't been this angry since Abraham Lincoln freed their slaves, and they're pretty much ticked off now. Jay Ratliff, aviation travel expert. All right, Jay, you sent me a story. I got to tell you about it. This airplane that in Denver that ended up a tire blowing up and evacuating off the slides. Producer Chad and I actually, a couple of our good friends were heading off to a cruise. And they were on that flight leaving Denver, and it's the first time ever that they had ever chosen to sit in the emergency exit seat. They had to sit in that seat, open the door. Our friend Patrick, who was on that aisle, he actually studied in the military about plane crash recovery. So opening the exit door was not a big problem for him. But what a harrowing experience. A tire blows up, the landing gear catches fire. It's a mess.
Well, you know, in the heat, a lot of times we will have tires blow on takeoff or landing, times of great stress on those tires. And given the heat, a lot of times that'll happen. And occasionally they do catch on fire and it creates a problem. And of course, here in Denver, we had just that with the situation that took place with the aircraft that was rolling to take off, tire blows, catches fire. They cancel the takeoff, smoke begins to fill the cabin, and the emergency evacuation is called for. The part that just annoys me to no end, and I've had my blood pressure medication today, so I can talk about it, is the individuals who stop and collect their large carry-on luggage and go dragging it across the tarmac. Jimmy, it just drives me crazy because you're told by a uniformed crew member to leave your carry-on bags behind. It's a felony if you don't abide by the instructions of a uniformed crew member. You've got a cabin that's filling up with toxic smoke, and you stop to delay that evacuation so that you can retrieve and then carry out your large hand carry bag. This is totally unacceptable. It happens every flight. Instead of a 90-second or less evacuation time, we're seeing times where it takes 3-4 minutes and longer to get off a plane because of all the idiots that are stopping to collect their bags. And, you know, the National Transportation Safety Board did a study on American Airlines. I think it was Flight 383, a bunch of years ago, back in 2016. They had a fire breakout on an American Airlines flight on the ground, passengers deplane. And during the course of their year-long investigation, they came out and said in their final report, here's all the issues, contributing issues. But we need to do something about passengers who are exiting the aircraft with their luggage. It is tremendously slowing that evacuation process. That was 7 years ago. And what have we done? Nothing.
Nothing.
Not a single thing at all. You have the Aeroflot 1492 in 2019. Hit by lightning. It lands. It's the whole back of the airplane is on fire. Such dramatic footage here of everybody rushing to get out that emergency exit, the only ones they could in the front of the aircraft. And here comes passenger after passenger after passenger until nothing for about 8 seconds. And then you've got this guy coming out with these 3 bags he can barely hold as he's getting his fat butt down the slide. Moments later, plane blows up, 41 people die. How many more people could have been saved had he left those stupid pieces of luggage behind? So right now, nothing's being done. Nothing will be done until somebody gets hurt or killed. And then you will see these same useless people in Washington rush to the nearest microphone, probably pulling a hamstring in the process, announcing what they're going to do to show how much they care, to fix the problem. Well, guess what? We know there's a problem. And if they said, Jay, you're king for a day, I would fine every single person with a carry-on drag bag $100,000. You delayed a flight, endangered lives. You did exactly what you were not supposed to do. Here's the fine. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how serious I'm about it.
Yeah. I was watching it kind of humorously. Some people crashing and burning coming down the slides. Slides evidently are not easy for everyone, but especially when you're carrying your dang your carry-on bag.
Yep.
And I was watching this with horror. Thankfully, no one is injured on that. But I'm watching, just going, why do you have your suitcase with you? Right. I was screaming. I was watching.
Well, you're jumping onto something that feels like a trampoline. I mean, it's not a soft little, slide at an amusement park. And if you do it incorrectly, you're going to bounce going down it versus sliding. And typically what used to happen would be you'd have a few people at the bottom assisting people as they came off the plane. We can't do that now because we have to grab our phones and video it because we might get a like or two on our video. So gone are the days anybody's going to try to help anybody because, I've got to take my selfie. I've got to take a picture. I've got, it's frustrating to see how things are going these days, my friend. And it's, but again, this is a problem. You've got a congressman in Washington, D.C. who said, look, our 90-second evacuation rule test the FAA did a number of years ago is probably not valid because even though they put a bunch of people on a plane, blocked half the exits, dimmed the lights, we got everybody off in 90 seconds or less. So half the exits are blocked. We did what we should have done. Box checked. Well, the problem is you didn't use any elderly people, didn't use any children, you didn't use any obese people, you didn't anybody with any disabilities of any kind, and it's just not a real world test. So this congressman saying we need to go back and redo that test. I appreciate the congressman's efforts, but let's do something about the today issue. Yeah. Forget 90 seconds. We can't get people off the plane in 5 minutes because it's taking them so long to collect their luggage. People said, Jay, why can't they lock that door, the cargo thing? Well, the problem is we could, and it would prevent people from getting to their bags. But the other issue is this. Most people would stop and try to unstick it. They would think it's stuck. So instead of getting off the airplane, they'd be hammering on that overhead storage compartment because they would forget. And in a moment of panic, they would be going to retrieve their items, not knowing the fact that it's locked and they can't get off the plane.
Well, there's video footage. Everybody's got a cell phone, and I think they could identify all these jackasses that were coming off that plane with luggage. And maybe a flight ban. That way, we get them out of the pool when it comes to potential flyers. It's a serious issue, and I'm glad everybody was safe. And it was just the weirdness that our friends were sitting at that. They're the guys that had to open the door on the side of the plane that was actually being evacuated from. So
I love your idea about banning those individuals, but here's the problem. If you're a gate agent for United, I can go up and punch you in the face. And United's going to ban me for that assault for the rest of my life. They should. I'll face fines in a lawsuit, anything else. But I can still fly every other airline in the country. Yeah. Even though I'm a proven threat by physically assaulting an airline employee, airlines don't share the data. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things right now that when these airline officials, FAA officials, talk about how safety is their number one priority, protecting our employees is our number one priority, protecting our it's a bunch of crap. Because if they really felt like this, they wouldn't allow these people that are convicted of assault against a flight attendant and or a passenger to get back on another plane. Maybe not ban them for life, but give them a 2 or 3 year, timeout in the corner so that they can't fly, in hopes that perhaps it would change some of the behavior. I don't think it would, but we've got to do there's just no consequences right now.
A 2-year ban and a Greyhound bus pass. That would be that all serve them very well. I don't know if Greyhound's still around, but I'm going to give them some business if they are. All right, real quick, rapid fire here. Delta Airlines pilot was arrested after he landed his aircraft in San Francisco. That's not a good sign. Your pilot's getting hauled off to the pokey while you're deplaning.
Well, before you're deplaning, because what happens is you have this flight from Minneapolis to San Francisco land. Passengers are remaining seated for the most part. You have 10 different law enforcement officers storm onto the plane, and you're thinking, my gosh, which passenger are they after? And they keep going right up to the cockpit and remove the first officer, and you're thinking, what in the world's going on? We didn't know at the time, but apparently it had something to do with child abuse, sexual abuse, something along those lines. And I guess they felt like they needed 10 individuals to go get this guy, but he was removed from the plane. Delta Airlines is obviously not commenting on any of that yet. So we'll see exactly where that goes. But yeah, we had another Delta pilot real quick in Stockholm, given a random breathalyzer test. He failed. Flight's canceled. They say, he's intoxicated. Well, they re-administered the test an hour later and he passed with flying colors. So, anytime something happens with a pilot, it's going to make news around the world, but it is the exception to the rule. It's like any other profession. You've got some really, really, really good people in a profession, but you've got a few that make everybody else kind of look bad.
United Airlines, based right here, or a hub right here in Denver, I should say, their flight attendants have rejected a new contract, and the contract was going to give them a pay raise. Give me your thoughts on this one.
Well, it was a 26% pay raise, but in the eyes of the flight attendants, I don't know, 26,000 of them, I think they had 90-some% voting and 70-some% said no. It wasn't adequate for what they said they've done to try to help United get to where they're at today. And, a lot of people will shake their heads and say, Jay, what is it with these people? I mean, a 26% pay raise, but, it's a lot like if you're an NFL player or somebody in Major League Baseball. When you're negotiating your contract, you want to be paid at least what the other players of like talent are getting paid. And that's what they want in the airline industry. Just give us something equitable. Now, you hope that you can get something a little bit better than that, knowing that you're going to have this contract for a number of years. And you don't want to agree to something you're going to be locked into for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and see everybody else in other airlines getting paid far more money than you. It can be the benefits were off, the time scheduling off, seniority issues. I don't know the particulars as far as the agreement that caused this one to go down, but most of it had to do with the pay, from what I'm being told. And they simply want something that's going to be equitable, and I don't think that that's asking too much.
What is it like, my friend, to move about the country today? I flew in and out of Denver to pick my son up. It took him to and picked him up from Denver Airport. I've dubbed Denver as the worst airport in America, by the way. It's awful. I'll explain that to the listeners later, but what's it like to travel today?
Denver's got some good points, but yeah, operationally can be a challenge at times. The weather that we've been having continues. Detroit's been an issue. It's gotten a little bit better in the last hour. As the day progresses, Boston and the Northeast are going to be having issues. So if you're traveling in that direction, show up to the airport at least 2 hours before departure. In case there's any changes to your itinerary, gives you a chance to meet with an agent that might be able to get you to your destination, routing you through another hub. If you're headed south or towards to the West Coast, you should be in pretty good shape unless your plane's being routed through one of those areas impacted by weather. And obviously the afternoon pop-up thunderstorms continue to be a problem, delaying as many airports around the country, but those delays tend to be minimal.
Now, sometimes we got to talk about Denver. Denver's a bottleneck. Everybody shows up at the same place, then they disperse you, as opposed to most airports. Hey, if you're in United, go to Terminal C. They bottleneck everyone at the entrance and they bottleneck everyone at the exit, and that's why I dubbed it its worst airport.
Yeah, there's times you could go play basketball up and down the airport and nobody's around. So it's and then other times you can't breathe with the number of people that pass through there. And if you understand, as we're being told, that they're expecting commercial air travel to double over the next 10, 15 years or so. Where are you going to put all these people?
I don't know. Not in Denver. Please don't fly here. If I ever relocate, I told my son, I said, if I ever move from Colorado, the airport is going to be one of my top choices of where I go somewhere else because it's chaos out there anymore. Jay Ratliff.
You own a business. That's what a lot of the business leaders look at, the airport and how quickly can I get our folks in and out of town.
It's awful. Jay Ratliff, I know you got to run jratliff.com. Check it out. You'll see some day trading information. Great sponsor of our golf tournament, by the way. jratliff.com. jratliff.com. Stayed a little overtime with me because we got started a little bit late. jratliff.com. All right. A couple of comments on the question of the day we brought in here. Have you ever bought anything online that you regretted buying? You thought you bought something else? I tried one time buying shirts and shoes, and I don't like doing that because some shirts, an extra large is great. Some shirts, a 2X is great. And then some shirts, you're like, oh, who made this in China? This is like for a real small person. It looks like Ray has a problem, had an issue similar, not with clothing. He said in the YouTube comment, he said, last year my son bought a recliner from Amazon. He thought it was a full-size chair. Instead, it showed up, it was a recliner for a child. Oops. Yeah, that's a problem. See, that's sometimes sizing on clothing. I never thought about chairs. You just might buy the wrong thing and have to do the return. The great thing about Amazon is the returns are pretty simple on that. But anything you bought online, it wasn't as magical as what you thought it would be. Some of you then started sharing stories as I was talking. Richard C. Lyons were talking about our poor college days and the early days when you literally tried to find two nickels to rub together. And I tell my Taco Bell story. I still occasionally will go sit reflective. I'll do that. Now, I don't do the Dr. Pepper now. I still do the Diet Pepsi. But at the time college days, I do the Dr. Pepper and a bean burrito, and that's all I could afford. And I would usually, if I could afford it, I'd do it on Thursday to celebrate because I almost made it to Friday. And that was how poor I was in college. And that was the day you had a 59-cent bean burrito, and that was a tough purchase to make for me. Jeff says anywhere restaurants have free sauce packages, you can add it to ramen noodles for a quick meal. Good to know. Mexican, you can do barbecue. Asian, if you don't like the sauce packets that are in those ramen noodles, you can do that. Jim says White Castle hamburgers 5 for $1. Yeah, that was a starving kid's meal. If you do, I'm not a fan of the White Castle. I'm going to be honest. I had White Castle one time. I was at a conference in Ohio. I don't know where it's at, White Castle, and it was late. And some of my colleagues, we flew into town. They want to go to White Castle. I got White Castle. I had a White Castle. The dining room was closed. We didn't want to go back to the hotel yet, so we're standing in the parking lot, talking, eating our burgers. Some colleagues, and that White Castle burger. It hit me in a bad way. And let's just say what I did in the bushes there at White Castle was not real pretty. It was projectile. And I, for some reason, I don't know what that is about White Castle. God bless the White Castle people. I know a lot of you have an affinity for it, but that was my one experience at White Castle. Now, people say you probably just got a bad batch. You should try it again. It was so volatile. A projectile that I don't know if I have the nerve to try it again. So, and by the way, let's always give credit where credit is due. Producer Chad heard that Stacy was roaming the chat room out there and spell checking his Whataburger spelling yesterday. And so, ladies and gentlemen, producer Chad has put as my title, it's spelled Whataburger. So we've gone from my title bar being my title as to who I am. To now it's producer Chad sending messages out to the audience saying, shut up is what it is. So at least he said, because what producer Chad probably was going to say is, shut up, Stacy, but he didn't. He just said it's spelled Whataburger. But I know producer Chad very well, and he was thinking, shut up. No, he never say that to anybody. Anyway, good to have you here. It's just funny. Stacy's laughing there in Texas. Arloa, I mentioned her, and she said she did correct her own spelling one time. Well, it's something about the Texas people. The Texas people like to correct spelling on the show. And, it's probably because Texans go to public schools there, and they're smarter than the rest of America. I mean, if you're going to send your kid to a public school, I would choose a public school in Texas far above the public school in Colorado or California. At least for the most part. I mean, look how good I turned out. Does it get better than this? I graduated from a Texas school. And some of you are now thinking you would never raise your kids in Texas because they could turn out like this. That hurts a little bit, but I understand. All right, good to have all of you here on the show. Can I remind you about Sherry Cree? HomesWithSherry.com. HomesWithSherry.com is her website. Again, I know right now you're the heart of summer vacation. Kids are getting ready to go back to school. But you were thinking, man, is this the last summer we're going to be in our home? Boy, some of you thinking, I wish we move and I'd like to be in a new place by Christmas. Listen, you got to talk these strategies out. And a lot of times the time you start talking about selling or buying a new home is not the time you do it. You kind of get your feelers out in the market. What are the trends? Where are things headed? And you can kind of start prepping. So maybe you're ready to stick the sign in your yard right now. Maybe you just want to have a strategic conversation to say, you know what, I'm not in a huge hurry, but when would be a good time? When's the next time? Right now, are we in a buyer's market? Are we in a seller's market? Sherry Cree is our good friend. She's been to Africa with us, great friend of our charity program, a great friend of this broadcast as well. And she wants to help you make the right decision and to make the decision rightly. There's to make the right decision and do it the right way. And that's just about understanding everything about the real estate market. If you're in the Denver metro area, Fort Collins, Greeley, Boulder, Broomfield, Parker, Aurora, Highlands Ranch, you get the idea, Littleton, Lakewood, Sherry wants to help you make your real estate dreams come true. And she approaches it. First of all, it's your dream. She wants them to come true. She wants you to be able to parlay your real estate decision into generational wealth. So she's coming big picture with you. And she also wants to earn the privilege of becoming your realtor for life. So for her, it's not just, oh, we're going to stage the house and you should trim this bush there and and paint that wall and we're good, sign. And then, no, she wants to become your realtor for life. And so therefore, she doesn't mind if you call her up today and you know you can't move till after December. Maybe you want the kids to get back to school, the chaos ends, and then you're willing to list the home, but you need to have that transaction done before the weather turns or before winter comes or holidays. All these things. Strategize with Sherry, HomesWithSherry.com, HomesWithSherry.com. And if you're in an area that she says, I don't know that area that well, she will give you a referral. She has great connections. She's her connectivity is amazing and free referral service. So if you want somebody that can be trusted, she can help you find that right person that fits you and the area you want to go to. You owe it to yourself. Support Sherry, HomesWithSherry.com, HomesWithSherry.com. Sherry Cree, she's ready to help you. And again, even if you're not quite ready for that sign to go in the yard, she's willing to have those conversations so that you make the right decision at the right time. And that's a key thing because you sometimes timing is everything, and she can help you with the timing. Strategize with her. HomesWithSherry.com, HomesWithSherry.com, HomesWithSherry.com. And you be sure to tell Sherry Cree that you heard about her as Jimmy Lakey was pontificating about her. HomesWithSherry.com. Speaking of Sherry Cree, she will be at our golf tournament. She was one of the first foursomes to get registered. Her and her husband and some friends are going to be playing at our golf tournament. It's Friday, September the 5th. It's at the Colorado National Golf Club in Colorado, Erie, Colorado, to be precise. If you don't know where Erie is at, that is right off the. If you know Denver, there's the 470 Northwest Parkway loop that goes around, and it's just kind of right off that loop, about 25-30 minutes past the airport as you head into Boulder. But it's easy access to Interstate 25, and if you're from out of town. We will help you connect with lodging and hotels in the area as well. But come support September the 5th. It's a Friday, Colorado National Golf Club. And there are some sponsorship opportunities available. Sherry is going to be playing. Jay Ratliff sponsored a handful of our holes, and there's other opportunities available. So even if you can't play or don't want to play, you could sponsor a hole. Last year we had somebody, a dear friend of ours, that her husband had unexpectedly passed away, and she sponsored a hole in his honor. And it was a great privilege. I actually went by there and toasted a beverage and lit up a cigar in honor of her husband, who is my friend as well. And it was a memorial hole. It was fantastic. We've got Jay Ratliff as sponsors a lot of holes with Day Trade Fun, which is his day trading lesson and e-learning site. And so whether you're small business, big business, national business, online business, or maybe you just want to honor somebody, you just want to love the kids, it's an easy entry-level sponsorship, and those are available on our website, and you'll get signage on the day of the golf course. But if you got a business, you want to sponsor all the drinks, we'll let you buy drinks for everybody, and you'll get all the credit for it. You get the idea. Go to our website, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com. Get signed up for the golf course. And by the way, big announcement coming up. We'll either do it tomorrow or Monday on the golf tournament. But go ahead and get signed up, especially for sponsorship. We'd love to have you, and register as well. You ready? Riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com. All right, we're out of time. We've gone way over here, and it went quick today. I appreciate you putting up with a little bit of the, what do you call it, the post-nasal drip that's still kind of sneaking in here. Thankfully, I had guests saving my butt, and I could go off screen a couple of times and cough a little bit. But, radio, we had cough buttons, and you have silence. A little more difficult here, because even if I mute the microphone, you're going to see me over here look like a mime hacking up a hairball if I turn off the volume for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean this. Go donate to our charity, riverspromise.org. Appreciate you doing that. Sponsor a kid. Save an orphan's life. Help them learn about Jesus. That's all we do. At Legacy Christian Academy in Rwanda. Go check out our website if you're not familiar with what we do. Riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org. I'll see you tomorrow morning, and it's going to be Friday. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. May God bless you. Please, God bless them all. And God bless America. Jimmy Lakey, peace. I'm out of here. It's spelled Whataburger. Don't forget it. I hate this Whataburger talk. I'm so hungry right now. There's a Whataburger right now. I'd camp out like a fat kid at a buffet. God bless you. See